I've met Kwabs and Satema before, and just love hearing what they have to say about the documentary Backlash, the Murder of George Floyd. What we're going to do for this session is, in a moment, I'm going to ask Kwabs and Satema to introduce themselves and then talk a little bit about the documentary. I'm sure you've all seen it, but it came out in May, so just a little bit of a refresher. Then I've got a series of questions to be answered, so I'm going to use those to kick things off. As you have questions across the session, can you please write them in the chat? I will then read them out for you. If you feel that I've missed the point or there's a point of clarification that you'd like, please do raise your hand and I'll then call on you. Keep in mind when you do raise your hand, although I know everyone knows this, if you could, for that moment, if you're comfortable with it, turn on your camera so that Satema and Kwabs can see you as you're speaking. All right, so with that, Satema, Kwabs, over to you.
Hi guys, I'm Kwabs, or Kwabena, and I was the director on the project.
And I'm Satema Tarawally, and I was the producer on the project. Would you like to tell them about the film?
Sure, why not? Just trying to recollect it now. So it was a sort of project. I think we started about a year ago, didn't we?
Yes.
And so it was commissioned by the BBC, and I guess it was commissioned around the anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, and looking at the events of the sort of spring and summer of 2020. And they and Rogan Productions, the company that we were working for, really wanted to make kind of quite an engaging and punchy film that looked at those events through the eyes of the people who were on the ground during that period of time. And we were really keen to question how it came to be, and how it came to be that, you know, we found ourselves in a place just 2 weeks later where there was quite a extreme backlash to the protesting that was happening in the UK and the US. We were quite ambitious with what we wanted to do. We wanted it to have quite a large cast. We wanted it to be in the UK and the US, and we wanted it to cover quite a lot of ground as well, and as much as possible throw forward to what was happening today. As we were making the film, the story kind of kept on evolving, and sort of every week there was a brand new news story that kind of was like about what we were making the film about. Yeah, and that's kind of it in a nutshell, I think, unless I've missed anything, Satema.
Yeah, I think it focused on the UK story and the UK reaction as well to George Floyd's murder and the activism on the ground. And we also tried to focus on UK activists who felt emboldened in 2020 to really hit the streets and fight against racism, really. So we tried to focus on that, as well as sort of the wider and the political effects of George Floyd's murder.
Thank you both. It's you know, I found it such a powerful, moving film. It was really, I suppose, in a way, wonderful to watch, but also kind of horrifying to watch and see the progress and what happened, and then the backlash to it. So you've spoken a bit about how the film came about, but just reflecting a bit more deeply, the anniversary of the murder seems like an obvious point to, which to reflect with what happened and the impact that had in society. But the actual business of getting the project off the ground is never straightforward. And you've sort of touched on this already, but could you just talk a bit more about how that really came about, and what it meant for the two of you, perhaps individually, what it meant for each of you?
Yeah, sure. Like, I'd worked at Rogan Productions before. I'd made a film about called The Final Attack on Wembley, and I was really, really keen to work there again because I think they make really beautiful, amazing films. The film, in its many iterations, as often is the way, the films around this area had been pitched to the BBC by Rogan quite a few different times, and I think they were working with Rogan to just try and find a way to sort of tell the story. I think as it started to come about, they started to wrap it around the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And then I got a call from, I think it was from James Rogan, who runs Rogan Productions, with his wife, Salita. And they sort of said, do you want to make this anniversary film, looking at where we've got to with race in the last 5 years? And sort of initially I was like, no thanks. Because I just didn't feel like it was really going to be quite thorny and very, very difficult. And I wondered about how easy it would be easy to make that film in the current climate. I sort of read the treatment and I kind of just fell in love with the idea of doing it. And then I came on board and developed it for 6 weeks, and it kind of evolved as we went, and we got access. We started to get more and more access in that period of time. And then I sort of, after about 6 weeks, I sort of finished the development process and left. And you don't know whether it's like, it's almost like a 1 in 100 chance for a film or for a series to get commissioned in general. And we've been speaking to the BBC a lot, and I felt like we'd done really good work, but there was no guarantee it was going to be commissioned. And then I left and went to another company to work on something else, and then maybe a week and a half later, I got a call just to say that it had been commissioned. I was a bit shocked, to be honest with you. And they were a bit like, "Can you come back next week?" So then we sort of had to hit the ground running. And I'd already worked with Satema, so she was already one of the people that we were interviewing for the project. And so I sort of gave her a call and tried to convince her to at least come in for the interview.
Yeah, and I did go in. And it was a really good interview. I think it was like a really interesting discussion. I think in that room, it felt like the film was going to be something that was really powerful and honest. I think the conversation felt really honest. It was like about like how we felt in that moment, not just, okay, what happened? Because I've done quite a lot of retrospective documentaries for the BBC, actually. And this really felt like something that was allowed to be angry and allowed to feel like the moment that we were having in that time. So it was something really exciting to be a part of. And I was very glad to be hired.
I think so. Just building on from the beginning towards kind of the middle point and then the end, the last few weeks, how did the narrative of the film evolve as you were making it?
I like, so the way I like to work is, and I was lucky because I had this sort of 6-week development period of time. This is a really large topic, and like 90 minutes sounds like a long time, but actually it's not that long a time at all. Like, and so I was just, I read lots of articles, I read lots of think pieces, I listened to lots, I had lots of conversations, I bored lots of people in my life about the film that like we hoped to make. So like I kind of knew what the first 2/3 of the film were in terms of what we were gonna cover. That last third sort of plagued my life for about 5 to 6 months. It took us until the edit to kind of really find what that last piece of the puzzle was in terms of.
And it was ever changing.
Yeah, because the story was evolving and evolving and evolving. I knew what the tone was. Like I knew that if I was going to be part of a film about race, I wanted it to be reasonably unflinching. I wanted it, as Satema said, I wanted it to capture the anger and the uncertainty of that period of time, and I wanted it to feel immersive and propulsive, which is just one of those buzzwords people in TV use quite a lot. But like I knew that I wanted all those things. I knew what it was to feel, but getting that last third was quite difficult, just because it was like, what next? What's going to happen tomorrow? Even in the process of developing it, like these stories are popping up every week, and so you're just trying to. And we had a high ambition for what the film wanted to be. The channel had a really high ambition as well, and it was just like, how do we cover all of these things?
Definitely.
Can you, if you remember, what were some of the different paths that you were thinking of going down and then decided not to and change that kind of last third of it?
So I mean, there were lots. There's lots, like, and I think the things that sort of still remain in the film, but just like for example, I think there was quite a big popular cultural reaction to what was going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was certain points in the development process and in the making of the film that was certainly like a bigger part of the story. It's still in the film, but it's not as big a part of the film. And I really like the bits where it is in the film. But we were going to do sections where we looked at the media in a really big way, but that kind of dropped out. I think the biggest thing is sort of like there were lots of avenues that we could have gone down, but the narrowing of focus, which really happened like in the last couple of months, it became much more about the police. it very much became about that interaction, that intersection between race and policing. So we looked at things like media. We looked at sort of the bigger, wider American story as well. But we just had to be quite disciplined about what we could cover in the time that we had.
Yeah, and also I think when you're making a film like this that is in parts about a difficult topic, there is the entertainment value as well. So there was moments where, as I said, we end up focusing on the police a lot. So we had a whole section where we were talking about the McPherson report, they were talking about the Charing Cross report, they were talking about, and it became, the report cut for a while, and it was like very detailed into what was in those reports and how they came to be. And like that might not have been as entertaining for the audience, but we need to have that information in there. So it was just like, sometimes sections were a lot longer than they ended up being in the film. So that was a big third of it. We had, some of the people that featured in it, or stories that featured in it, we had more sort of in-depth conversations or different ways of presenting it. But I think overall we sort of went for an ending that didn't feel like as long, like not like a different film, like it felt like it was carrying on from the film. And I think it worked a lot better eventually, but there were many late nights in the end, many Farmer J's being ordered at 9 p.m. trying to make that the ending work, especially.
And for me personally, I really liked the ending, kind of the stories with what happened to some of the individual people who we'd seen, and I felt like that really had an impact, that and it's lasted with me, that impact.
No, good.
Darren has put a question in the chat, which is, how did you consider the prospective audience, and how did this shape the film?
Ooh.
I think, especially as, I'm not going to speak for Quabs, but especially as a Black filmmaker, you always consider the audience in a way that you're not making a film just for Black people, you're making a film for everyone, just to make that clear. You're never just making a film for Black people. In fact, when you work in documentaries, you're mostly making film for documentary lovers. But when you have a topic that is so close to people's hearts, there is always like an added responsibility and thinking of perspective and thinking of what within the community and those intersections might trigger them, or they might not like, or they might argue against. So something that we were constantly thinking about. This is like when we're thinking of casting, when we're thinking of the stories people are telling, when we're thinking things we do say and things we don't say. So constantly being considered, as well as ourselves and as well as the commissioners. I think you are always thinking of like the audience at large. So it's a difficult thing to do, but you kind of just have to always think of the audience, which is hard because I feel like the audience is always the most critical, but it's also the most important. So, yeah.
I think we were lucky. I think our team were quite, say, representative, like quite a balanced team from a variety of backgrounds, and that kind of I think what was quite useful, you'd end up having conversations which would be reflective of what your audience would ask. And what was nice about working with someone like Satema is like she's not going to hold back. I feel like you're quite good at asking those questions that our audience were going to ask. And I think you're right. Like the balance is like, I was always very concerned about the thing that kept me up at night was making sure that like it was representative of the wide gamut of Black opinions, and making sure that it was representative of those activists and true to their stories. But you are trying to reach a wider audience. You're trying to reach an audience that don't necessarily have your opinion or the opinion of the activists, and you're just trying to get them to connect with the subject matter, which isn't a given.
Thanks. Do you think if you were just starting out doing the film today, or perhaps a year from now, if you could predict the future, do you think it would still be possible to make the film and to make it in the same way?
That's a big question, Laura.
I mean,
yeah.
great. Yes, I mean, I do think. I mean, it's a hard question. I think, yeah, I do think you'd still be able to make the film. I mean, I think we've seen in the events of just the last week that this is still a film that feels very, very relevant. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I would make it regardless because I'm quite stubborn. So I think I was just a bit like, this needs to be made, so we're going to make it. And I think we worked with, a good team at the BBC who were quite committed to what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
Do you think, just pushing a bit more on that one,
Sure.
do you think if you were making it now, there would be more kind of backlash that you would be highlighting, or would it be kind of different, more international, or do you think it would be much more about the kind of here and now, or the politics, or something else?
Yeah. I mean, so the politics, I feel, even as we were working on it, we were dealing with. So we went to America the week that what's his name, Donald Trump was inaugurated. So we were dealing with him rolling out all of these things. And in those 100 days, we were in the edit as well. So he was rolling out all of these things that were changing. I think as a world, it seems that we're kind of like pushing internationalism all over the world. And it feels very anti-immigration. It feels very anti-Black. It feels very anti anything that isn't white. So I think it would be, the reaction might be different than what it was. I feel like we had quite a positive reaction, which is a really nice thing to have. But in general, it's a positive reaction. But when the trailer was put on the BBC, for example, on their social media, whoa, which is quite scary. Not scary, but I think Facebook's always like that. Actually, if you make anything, the reactions can be quite a little bit more like, oh, is this what we're spending our taxpayers' money on? I think there would just be possibly more of that, because it does feel like society is tipping a little bit more in that way at the moment. But in general, I think it's a retrospective program. It's about the history of something that's happened. It's about these activists, and it should still be able to be made, and programs like that should still be able to be made, because they're not changed. It's just a documentary. It documents what's happening, so it should be fine to make. But I think the way things are received now might be a bit different.
I think I would still make it in a reasonably similar way. Like, I think we did the right thing by, and it was an evolution of who we centered in the story. So, like, for example, like just to bang on about her for a while, like Haddie, who I'd say was like alongside with Shay and Nakima, like the center of the film. The reason why we chose her story is it's one I think that a lot of our viewers, regardless of their background, can kind of identify with. She was someone who hadn't really thought about race before 2020 in a larger way, who was having a reckoning about her own identity, like lots of people were, and lots of people started to have those thoughts and conversations. And she was kind of like the protagonist. She went on a hero's journey. She made she starts off naive, and she ends up being quite worldly and understanding the world around her and her place within it. And I think there's something about her story that is empathy inducing. And if I was to make this film a year later, she'd still be at the center of the film, because it allows people to get underneath the story and feel like you're going along with her. I'd still put Shay Lingo in the center of the story, because I think the story of Julian Cole is really, really important. I think it was important that we put that story at the center of the film. I think, filmmaking is all about inducing empathy as well as getting your argument across. I think both those stories did that quite successfully. So I think it allowed people to start to think about an issue maybe they hadn't thought about, which I think is still needed now.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, as you were speaking, I was thinking about Cody, and I think her story is absolutely powerful. But then also the sitting, I'm thinking it's at the kitchen table with her mum and having those conversations that kind of really hit home. And I think, but I don't remember correctly, that Julian Cole's mum was also featured. Was she not?
No, she wasn't in it.
Okay. I'm making things up now.
No, that's all right. Shay was in it. He was his friend.
Okay. But there, and for me, the Cotty kind of that the familial relationship, right? And being in the kitchen, which seems like, a place where we all are with our families talking all the time, and it just really hit home. Got a question from Listra in the chat. Do you think if you were making it now, the BBC would have stricter editorial control? And did you feel the commission excuse me, did you feel the commission controls were restrictive? That's a tongue twister.
Yeah. I think the BBC is very cautious to make sure things are balanced and very cautious to make sure things are like legally sound. And we did that. And despite the fact that we did that, the film is still the film. I don't think it changed anything. That is just balance. And I think it shouldn't really be a challenge if you're making a film properly. So yeah, the BBC, they make sure everything is balanced, and I'm sure if we were making it now, they would still be doing that. But I think that was just something that was always on the forefront of our minds, and always doing our due diligence to make sure that we have that balance. And the BBC just help us do that. But when you're making a film about an issue, if you're honest and you say the facts are always the facts.
Yeah, I couldn't really say it better than that, really. It's the second part of that question. I just might need it to be. Did you feel that commission controls were restrictive? Do you want to expand on that?
Listra, do you want to come in and expand? So I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I suppose it's given the current context with regard to I would say media, particularly the BBC, with regard to issues around freedom of your journalistic your journalistic ethics, and again, based in a current climate where they seem to be on the back foot with a lot of issues around these particular issues, race, gender ethnicity. Let's forget Prince, but issues that they have fallen foul of because of it. And I think it's I think it's more of a challenge now for making films like yours. So I just wanted to know how you felt about your own integrity being represented in the film. And I think Satema, you said you felt that you were able to create balance and be allowed to do so in the way you saw fit. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, look, I think the truth is, like, it's a really good question. I think the truth is you fight for the film that you want to make. And I think as long as you are doing that in an editorially sound way, the film is fact checked, but you fight for the tone, you fight to say what you want to say, and then the film is fact checked and it is what it is. Like, I feel really happy the BBC commissioned it, and they backed us to make the film that we made.
Yes. Thanks both of you, and thanks Lara for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks. My next question. Some of the most powerful sections for me are about the casual racism in the country, particularly in the UK. I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit about the decision that you made to focus as much in the UK as you did in the US.
It's hard. It was hard, right? Like, in terms of, like, I knew I wanted the film to have lots of, like, what we call user-generated content, so the stuff that you'd be filming on your phone, so it would feel quite immersive and gritty and reflective of that period of time. And if I'm honest, often the most arresting archive was the stuff that was happening in America, and there was an extremity to what was happening in America at the time that only really hit what happened in the UK like a week later. But I wanted the American story to propel the UK story. I wanted to juxtapose those two. I think I hope that we sort of showed there is a sort of difference. There's a nuanced difference between racism in the UK and racism in the US. And so it was kind of important to have those moments of very casual racism. I think often when there was a choice about whether to steer in or out of those moments, I very much veered the car into those moments, because you just want to show the reality, what the realities sometimes are for people of colour in the UK. And you just want to show real stories and sort of, you know, make it as, I think you help people to feel and understand when you show things in the most unvarnished, honest way possible. So what I felt privileged to do is that there had been a lot of focus on the US, but not as much focus documentary wise in the UK about what was happening during that period of time. And it's you know, in a way it's a far more complicated film to make, because there are so many nuances to that story and racism in the UK. But it felt quite exciting to sort of deal with it, you know, the thorniness of it all, and to find like different ways to tell that story, whether it was like city or town or rural. Yeah.
Thanks. Satema, anything to add, or Quab's got it all?
I think Quab's got it all. I think the focus on this UK is because it's like a British story. I think even Quabs, you told this story a lot, that when you first told your friend you were making this film, they're like, oh, that American thing. Like, that wasn't really a thing here, Black Lives Matter. So I think it was important to sort of highlight that it not only was it a big event that happened in the US, that it really triggered a lot for people here. And I think also highlighting how racism manifests itself in the UK, like we mentioned, Hattie's story, for example. In places like that, people don't think people are racist because they don't think they are around Black people enough. But it's quite horrific when they are around Black people. So I think that was a really interesting way to sort of highlight how covert and how quiet, but also how dangerous once we get to the end of her story at the end of the film, that these feelings can be and how they can manifest themselves, and how we can't ignore that the petite racism just because you think it's not as deftly as it is in the US. So I think that was just a choice to kind of highlight these issues. Although, you know, police don't have guns, although, you know, we don't have the history of segregation in this country, it doesn't mean that we don't have an issue with race here.
Absolutely. Darren has posted in the chat. So Darren says, I am sorry, I don't know all. Oh, sorry, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I don't know all aspects of your career, but I wanted to reflect that nearly every documentary I have seen about Black living experience is about struggle and challenge and discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few films celebrating music or sport, but not many. Would you like to see or be involved in a more celebratory film? Do you think we are still in a position or at a position in time where many issues still need to be surfaced?
Yes, and yes. Yeah. Look, I think you're completely right. Look, I think this is a film that needed to be made, right? And films like these need to be made, and hopefully they are going to be made over the next 5, 10, 15 years, by new and exciting filmmakers. But of course, I want to make films that are about like Black joy, and hopefully we had a bit of joy within the film as well. Of course I do, yeah. Like, it's important. Like, those films don't get commissioned as much. Like, that's just the God's honest truth. But like, we were both at a screening a couple of weeks ago, like a film called Black is Beautiful by a director called Yemi Bamiro, which is very much a film that is very much about Black triumph and joy. And yes, there is adversity, but it's about the overcoming of that adversity. Just talk about someone else's film whilst we talk about this film, but like did really like stay with me.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important. It's just they just don't get commissioned as much. Both are important. We just need to get more commissioned.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think like both are very important. as I said, I've done a lot of retrospective stuff, so retrospective documentaries, history documentaries, which highlight the Black British community, and I think they're really important for us to understand ourselves and our standing in this community, but also, yeah, the joy and the things that the Black community in this country bring to this society are really, really important to talk about. But it's always trickier to get those stories commissioned or to even hear someone tell those stories. I think one thing that we haven't quite caught up with yet in our media landscape here in the UK is that, like, the importance of, like, Black joy. That even that film, that's an American subject, and I think it will do really well in the US. But I don't know if I'm going to see that on the UK screens. That will be easier for us to access. If you don't have Sky, you might not see it. Well, I don't know where it's going to be platforms, but anyway, like, the Black is Beautiful film, but that film will thrive in the US, where here I think there is this kind of, like, partition and this lack of, like, seeing Black audiences or an understanding that they need these sort of programs too, and, like, feeling those things are not important. I think that's kind of the problem sometimes. But absolutely, Black joy. I would love to work on something that was Black and happy. We're quite joyful people, and even when we're making something like this, we can find joy and laughter and you know, have those moments. So I can only imagine what it's like to tell a story that actually actually comes from a place of that, you know. So absolutely, I agree. It's a problem, but I think also these stories are really important, and we can't sidestep them. We need to be seen sometimes in not the best light, but yeah.
Thanks. And I mean, I think it's an excellent question, but you're right. When I'm thinking about the film Backlash, there is a bit of a journey, and there are these moments where I feel uplifted, right? So, like, you know, Kadi initially getting the permission to hold that protest in the Forest of Dean. Of course, it didn't last very long, but I did have that kind of high, and then it was low, and then it was high again. So there was this journey, which I really felt like you took us through it.
And I think, you know, there are moments like with Munya Chihuahua, like James Rogan, who's one of the execs on the project. Like, he was always saying, you need more comedy, you need more of this in the film, and I was always a bit like, I wasn't sure, but then when I watched it in the cinema, you need these moments of joy and elation within and triumph within the film, just to kind of give you that kind of undulation. Yeah, and also I would also just sort of say, like, to me, one of the things I really liked, that I feel like is something of the Black experience that feels like it's in Backlash, and I think it's something of Satema and I and other people in the film, is like that feeling of, like, I think when you're a person of colour, sometimes you just have to laugh. When something is overt or ridiculous, it is also funny at the same time. Sometimes, you know, some of these awful moments have this duality to it, because racism is absurd, and so sometimes you just have to kind of laugh. But look, I think, as Satema said, definitely we want more films that are just joy. Hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Thanks. I want to ask a bit about the title and the meaning behind it. So, do you have a sense of why the backlash happened, and how did you come up with the title Backlash, and at what point during the making of the film? So that's a three-part question. Sorry.
The title, to start with the easiest question of the three, the title, do you know what? Like, it had been bouncing around for quite a long time, and it came out. It was James. It was a phone call with James where he was like, "What about this?" And I said, like, "Sounds good," you know. I think we were kind of like in the throes of the edit, so it wasn't something I was thinking about. But you know, I think it ultimately came about because we always knew that the halfway point of the film was going to be the backlash itself, as in the second backlash, which is the backlash from elements from the far right. And I think what I liked about the title is, you know, and I sort of say this now, like 5 months later, as if it was the cleverest thing in the world, but it just had multiple meanings. It was like the backlash to the murder, and then the backlash to the backlash. And then then you didn't know what the backlash was going to be. So it felt like it was just a clever title, also impactful. Why do I think the backlash? I think backlash sometimes is inevitable. I think I think what we talked about quite a lot in the early parts of developing and making the film were the cyclical nature of race relations. Sorry, Sal's nodding because I said it about 20,000 times in 6 months.
Is it the
But it is
cyclical nature?
cyclical. It just feels to me like, these things like happen, like a big murder or event happens in terms of like race, and then there is a reaction, a groundswell from the community around it and the media around it, and then there is a reaction to that. That does feel like the way that history operates. It's just that when it happened in 2020, it felt like it happened in a way that we had on a scale and impacted people who hadn't really been impacted by it before for numerous reasons. So I don't think it was unique to this situation. I think it absolutely may well happen again, and by may I mean will. I think it is what it is. Yeah. Sorry, that's an incredibly bleak answer. Sorry.
Well, bleak but truthful. Yeah. And Fatima, just want to make sure not.
Oh no, yeah, I completely agree. The cyclical nature of these things does happen a lot. Like if you look back to 1948, there was this big rush of like immigrations from these colonies that came over to the UK, and then what happened? There's reactions to it which were negative. It's just what happens. So it's just a continuous thing in history that we always see. So, I think the film like exhibits that perfectly. Even just a short amount of time, like 5 years. To see that happen over and over again it felt, once we had the title, it felt really obvious that we had made a film which involves a backlash to the backlash to the backlash to a backlash. So yeah.
So maybe that's the next film, though probably not about joy again. Comment in the chat from Darren: the images of 2020 are being weaponized today in condemning Antifa and setting a narrative of a population in need of suppression. It's such a shame and very chilling.
Yeah, I would completely agree. It is the playbook, though, isn't it? Like divide and conquer. Unfortunately, yeah, it's really sad. It's really sad. Look, I think it, when we're in the process of making the film, and I think at that point we'd already spoken to the lawyers and George's family. I think then to get to see the tweet, I think I got that message one morning, like as I was getting out of bed, from some of the team about maybe thinking about like reverting the decision to in prison and George Floyd's murderer. Like I was like deeply saddened and really, really shocked by that. So yeah, I think it's something that will be continued to be weaponized over time, sadly.
Sure.
Thanks. How can a documentary storyteller bear witness to trauma while avoiding sensationalism?
Ooh.
I'll add that you navigated that really well.
Depends what you mean by. What do you mean by sensationalism?
Yeah.
So really making it kind of the like this here now. Look at this thing, and just kind of making sure that it's the story of trauma and reflecting it accurately, but not getting everybody to jump over and look at that, and then the next day just go back to their normal lives.
I see. Okay, that's a really good question. I mean, I think I'll need to talk about it. I'll talk about it from the context of this film, which is to say, like, every kind of like frame, every piece of archive, even how we start the film, we really, really poured quite a lot of thought into it. What we wanted to make sure that it evoked. We knew that it would evoke emotion, but it wasn't about triggering or traumatizing people. It was about making them feel something or making them, think through something. I think you would just approach it as a human being, right? You're like, and I think it was important that that it was such a balanced team so that you could see it from multiple perspectives. But like if we talk about how we started the film, which is with the video itself, for example, like that was there, I sort of walked in one. We had lots of different ways of starting that film that we talked about. Starting a film is always the thing that is the most difficult thing to do when you're editing a film, and it's always the thing you just want to leave until near the end because it's really hard. And oh, hello.
Sorry, I lost everyone there for a second.
Yeah. But Greg Morgan, who's one of the editors, he cut this start, and I was really, really moved by it. But in the process of the kind of as it went between cuts, like we evaluated every single shot, how long we held on images, what you were listening to really tried to make sure that it was emotive but not triggering. And that's a really fine line to chart, but it just requires just quite a lot of discipline and empathy and rigor.
I agree.
Thanks. What role do you think film generally can play in widening public understanding of systemic racism and social change? So, an easy one here.
I think it's a really important and accessible way. I think I'm someone who I'm a big documentary geek, but as a child, I feel like I was learning stuff via documentaries, via it's probably BBC Three mostly because I was young, but watching those things, I'm learning something small without having to pick up a book or having it to be dull. It's always but in a way that is accessible to everyone. So I think it's incredibly important. Not everyone is naturally curious. Not everyone wants to go to school to learn these sort of things. So I think the media can be an important tool, and it always has been. And as filmmakers, we can use documentaries or short films or even narrative films to create those stories and teach people things. And if you're lucky, they might even go learn some more after they read it, after they watch it. So I think it's incredibly important. I think it's a very accessible way for everyone. BBC iPlayer, most people have that. You can watch this, you can watch other things. So I think it's a great way. And that's just from my experience. I've learned so much from film.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I think it's a really important tool. We're in the golden era of documentaries at the moment, one might say. I think the way I've always looked at it is sometimes you want to use these films as a way to kind of hide the medicine that you're trying to impart into the world. You don't always want to deal with it in such a head-on way. You kind of want to. My favorite moments when I've someone has come up to me and talks about a film that I've worked on or a film that they've watched is when they're sort of well, actually it was initially I really was thinking this, and it was really about this thing, but then underneath it there was actually this is what I started thinking about. It's crazy how it was really about that. And I think that that's how films influence and help and change the narrative. And I think you only have to look at a film that our friend made, which was about Grenfell, which came out this summer, to sort of see how important films are in influencing the public narrative. That's Game Changer of a film, or Perfect Neighbor, that's was number one last week, which has kind of reached millions and millions of people across the world, and got people to really think about certain laws in America.
Yeah, thanks. Do keep posting messages in the chat if you've got questions or comments. I've got a question. I don't know if it'll be one that you can answer, but if you had to choose one moment or one speaker, one person who you worked with in the film, Cotty or oh my gosh, the chief of police in Minneapolis, is there one person where you think kind of that was the essential one? That's the one that really kind of captures the message of the moment.
I loved all my contributors equally.
Oh, I was going to
No,
say
I'm
name.
they're all brilliant. Look, I think sometimes in the process of making a film, you're in an interview. What I love about making films is sometimes you're in an interview or having a conversation with someone on the way back from an interview, or you're in the edit or whatever, and there are suddenly these lines that stick in your head that you know need to be in the film. That I think one is a really good example is that it was a really late night. It was me, Sasma, and one of our editors, Ali, and we were cutting something which actually didn't end up in the film. It was completely irrelevant at the end. But like, what we did find was those lines at the end from Nakima about resisting. That kind of we knew I knew that was the end of the film. We put that at the end of the edit line because we knew that we were going to come back to it because it kind of summed up what we were doing. But I guess for me it's probably like in terms of like the heart of the film, it's Hadi or it's Shay for me. And I think in those interviews as we were doing that, actually that's not true. With Hadi, I knew that was like really really important, that story, and I knew that it was going to be the biggest story that threaded throughout the whole film, and I knew that she was going to be the heart of it because she made me feel so much in the room. With Shay, that kind of came a bit later, but like as things evolved, especially with Julian, like that just became more and more important. But yeah, sometimes in the moment, and sometimes you figure it out later. But yeah, I would say those ones have really really stuck with me.
Yeah, I think Nakima's interview and being in the room with her and kind of watching her go back and reflect on everything that she was saying. And then also she ended up being valuable because she had on her Facebook, she was like live streaming the whole way through. So a lot of the archive on the ground is literally her on the ground as things were happening, like minute by minute. And obviously at this point we've timelined every minute, and then you have someone who has recorded every minute. So that was like something that was really great and useful. Obviously Hadi, incredibly powerful. I had obviously spoken to Hadi for weeks, and then in the room it was just like she just kept giving us more and more, and it was like, oh my gosh. And the same with Shay, and I think Shay and Julian Cole are contributing themselves. Like Shay he represents Julian Cole in that story, and we had spoken about what stories to profile in the film because it is a very difficult decision to make. But after speaking to Shay and being in the edit and like getting to speak to people close to Julian as well, who aren't in the film, like it felt really important. So I always highlight that as something really, really important. But yeah, Nakima, Hadi, Shay, Julian, but also everyone. We're really grateful for everyone who took part and gave us their time and all their emotions and Kwab's very long interview style.
They were long, yeah.
As I was asking the question, I was thinking for myself, who was it for me? And I feel like there are so many, but for different reasons. Some of them I did feel this kind of feeling of optimism. Others I felt completely downtrodden. Others I felt like, I was being taken on the journey, and there were so many different emotions. So I do think they're all really crucial, but perhaps in different ways. Darren, who says, sorry, me again, but don't be sorry. It's great. So Darren says, I was interested in your perspectives. Opinion seems to be outweighing fact in the news and specifically in politics. How do you balance facts with opinions, and how believable is quote unquote truth?
Ooh.
Wow.
This goes back to the BBC thing. You can't really have a lot of opinions without factual backing. So that is just how we balance it. Like if it feels like everyone's got an opinion on something, it's like, okay, well, what's the factual balance? And you just have to like even it out. And honestly, journalism should be doing that. Film should be doing that. Everything that we watch should be doing that. And obviously we're living in a world where like, I don't know, Reddit forums seem to be the thing leading the opinions and the facts. So I don't know. That's what we do. It's balance, opinion and fact, balance, and hopefully they even each other out. And you watch it and you can take them both and make a logical decision on where you stand. But yeah, the opinion is outweighing facts at the moment. So what can you do about that? And you don't know what their sources are. So,
I've got nothing to add. I mean, that's a really kind of perfect answer as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Thank you. Any last minute comments, questions? And, oh, Philip.
I was going to type, but then I was taking too long. I wanted to follow up on your question, on the question earlier about the audience. I mean, what has the feedback and the reaction been like, and has there been different opinions, different takes on it from different demographics and so forth? I mean, or I suppose to what extent do you get a sense of that at all?
I would say, honestly, this is probably like the most positive reaction to anything I've ever worked on before. My mum was hollering and hooting about it, genuinely. And I've had a couple friends who like didn't watch it initially because they were like, oh, I don't really want to watch a film about that. And then when they have finally watched it, after I stopped speaking to them, they I'm joking, they were like, oh, okay, it's not what I expected, and it is not only powerful, but it has like elements of entertainment and it's framed really well. Kwab said really early on in this call that he wanted to make it feel like you were in it, like you were immersed within that moment. So that's what my mum speaks about a lot. She was just like, when they're on the protest, I feel like I was at the protest. She would never be at a protest. She calls them riots by accident all the times. But it's just, I've had really positive from all sorts of people, and it's been really nice. And it's been really nice to get it from filmmakers as well, because I think we're all very critical of each other. And we always say, well, what about this? But what about that? And we had a couple of those, but you know, you can always just give a good answer with that. But I think it's been really positive and it's been really nice to get that. So just more people should watch it. Tell everyone it's great if you get a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really encouraging. And I do wonder, again, by going back to Darren's question, the format helps here, as you were saying yourself, Satema. Documentaries are excellent at this, and what we're seeing so much of, especially the nonsense we've seen, well, almost every week, but especially the last couple of weeks, it's often clickbaity, horribly stereotyped, horribly cliched nonsense about representation this, representation that. And it's having the chance to do something long format, properly look into things. As you were saying, perhaps you've got a team working with some all sorts of things. So it's I think that's. I mean, I like Lara, very, very, very strong positive response to it, and glad that does seem to be the general feedback you've been getting, which is very encouraging, given some of the absolute nonsense that we're seeing elsewhere. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thanks. A final question from Darren. What should we look out for from you both? What's coming next?
Oh, good question.
It's a hard question.
A hard question. I mean, try and remember our names. I'm sure hopefully something good, hopefully something we're proud of. Yeah, that's all we can. We're both freelancers, so the next project is what is it? As your guess as well as mine, of what to look out for. So yeah.
I mean, I've worked on some smaller things, which has been good, but I'm looking for my next big film. I actually make one big film a year. That's nice. But yeah. But I did also, but like I'd say, like we've worked on lots of things over the years. So go through Satema and I's back catalogue. It's out there in the world.
Yeah. You want to know about some Black history? No, we've worked on lots of things and stuff, but yeah. What's next?
Yeah, let's see.
Maybe some Black joy. That'd be nice.
That would be. Okay, well, thank you both so much. Thank you everyone for being here. A huge round of applause for this. It's been absolutely excellent. And at this point, Donal, I am going to hand back to you. Steve?
Thank you, Lara. Yeah, thanks to Satema and Kwabs for joining us for such an engaging discussion, and indeed for making such an excellent and important film. We're really glad that you could talk to us about it today. This is the first in the Language, Literature and Politics Group's autumn interdisciplinary seminar series. We thought we would start with our strongest material, which was the Backlash film, but we have two more seminars in the series coming up in November on Wednesday afternoons. And they will each be working with a sort of a unifying theme, which is a thorn in the lion's paw, disruptive ideas and practices against monolithic power. So I think that's we've had a really good introduction to that concept today when we talk about people combining to fight injustice and racism. We've got two very different takes on it for our next two seminars. The first will be new perspectives on Spinoza's theological political treatise. This is a book that has just come out quite recently, edited by our director, Dan Taylor, along with Dr. Mari Voot of the University of Hamburg. So there will be a discussion on Spinoza's treatise and the challenges to the power of the church as the sort of core theme for that one. And then the following seminar is on theatre and politics in post-conflict Northern Ireland. I will be presenting on the book of the same title, which was released earlier this year, and looking at how popular arts and cultural activities and movements at ground level have offered a challenge to the two dominant blocks in Irish politics. So those will be happening on Wednesday afternoons at the same time in the month of November. We'd be really pleased if you could join us. And to that end, we suggest you join our mailing list. I have just put a link in the chat. So click on there, fill out the little form. I think there's one question or two questions. It's really just your email address. And then we'll be able to have you along to our seminars in the month of November. So just to sum up, I'll say thank you to Lara, to Kwabs and Satema, and to my co-directors in the Language, Literature and Politics group, Dan Taylor and Philip Sargent. And thanks to everyone for coming.
Thanks very much.